Hi, good day everyone. My name is Fitzgerald Haminit, your moderator of today's webinar organized by the Filipino Nursing Diaspora Network. For you to know, the Filipino Nursing Diaspora Network is founded in 2018 and the network is based in Sydney, Australia. It is an international professional organization serving Filipino nurses who are working and living outside of the Philippines. The network was an offshoot from the International Roundtable Meeting of Filipino Nursing Leaders, held at the Australian Catholic University last 17th of July 2018. The network's mission is actually to enhance the role and value of Filipino nurses across the globe. One of its flagship program is organizing webinars where it invites premier Filipino nurse researchers and experts from across the globe. It also aims to share insights, updates, and state-of-the-art knowledge from Filipino nursing researchers, to inspire with success from around nursing diaspora in the world. Finally, to build capacity and update about latest development and science relating to nursing and, of course, health. Special mention for our today's event partners, the Beta Nu Delta Nursing Society and the Nursing for Humanity. So before we proceed, let us all recognize that today we are commemorating the World Mental Health Day. Especially this time of pandemic, it is must for us to be of good mental health. So today, uh, to follow through, of course, and I'm very much excited of the today's event. But before we actually start with the webinar proper, let us join together in prayer by putting ourselves in the mighty presence of the Lord. So, Lord, as we plan and share together now, may you guide us by your Holy Spirit and lead us into all truth. Lord, as we go into this event, we place ourselves before you, for you are the filled with beauty and light, and care deeply about us. May your Spirit guide us. May your grace abound in us. Amen. So please take note that this session is being recorded for viewing of those nurses who are unable to participate today. So you can find them later on as we send you the recording. And at the end of the presentation, we will answer, of course, your questions, which you can type in the Q&A box that you see in the right side of the screen. And we will address many questions as we can later on. So a certificate of participation will be emailed to you alongside with the recording of this event. So let's start the ball rolling and proceed immediately with our um, resource person. But first, I would like to introduce our resource person. He has over 12 years in various academic settings like engineering, liberal arts, education, social sciences, and technical skills and technical fields rather. With more than 10 years experience in nursing education, healthcare research, and quality improvement initiatives. He's a graduate of various bachelor's degree, such as in arts, in literature, and chemical engineering, both from the Mindanao State University, Philippines, and Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Medina College. He further widened his horizon by taking several master's degree, like in public administration from the University of the Philippines, Master of Healthcare Administration, and Master of Science in Nursing, both from the University of Phoenix in Arizona. Our speaker is truly committed to excellence in education and lifelong learning as he pursued his doctorate in public administration at the University of the Philippines and Doctor of Nursing Practice at Grand Canyon University in Arizona. He's an expert in his field, and he used to work as an OR travel nurse in various facilities, an operating room nurse leader and educator at MD Anderson Cancer Center, At present, he is the Surgical Services Manager of Bayshore Medical Center. Friends, colleagues, let us welcome our resource person, an educator, a clinician and specialist, a researcher, a nurse leader, an expert, Dr. Johnrich R. Levine. Welcome,
Good
sir.
morning, everyone. Thank you, Fitz, for that warm introduction. If you can, if you have questions, I would rather that you raise your hand. I think I can see your hands raised on the screen if you do that, and then I will entertain whatever questions you have. But the ultimate goal for this session for today is to deliver to us a sharing of a particular field in nursing, which I believe that most of you are also interested in, or at least are curious about working in that field. Surgical area or the operating room is what we call it. Am I able to share? Hang on a second. I'm going to share my screen. Uh, There we go. All right, so let's start with a little reflection here. I would like to share this to you, as I always share this whenever I have a session like this. And it is that success requires no explanation. Failure permits no alibis. When you're successful, you don't need to explain, the results are there. And when you're not successful, no matter what your alibis are, it will not work. So welcome to the Perioperative Star Preceptor Development Program. This is the first ever Preceptor development program that we have developed all over the country. This is the first in the facility where I work, but this is also first in the system of hospitals that I'm a part of. But this is also apparently the only program that is existent in the country. When I say the country, it's the United States of America. So all 50 states depend on a preceptor program in the operating room that is developed to them by the AORN, which is the Association of Operating Room Nurses. However, we developed this program to address the fact that as preceptors, when I say preceptors, they are teachers. You are kind of a teacher, a mentor, a coach, combined together in a surgical area. And if you work in the surgical area, you will know that kind of difficult to journey around or work around teaching the new nurses in that environment, and it is very fast paced. So we developed a program that is suitable to that, and I hope that as we share this, you can gain some insights about how different the approach could be compared with, let's say, you are in the floor, you are in the medical surgical unit, or you are in ICU, or you are in the emergency unit. So we call this program STAR, and that is pretty much what we picture it would be. And STAR would, this program would promise advancing our nursing preceptorship program practice, your personal job performance, satisfaction, and an enjoyable nursing career in the operating room. And not just in the operating room, wherever this is applicable, because if I travel to the Philippines, a lot of times, every year I used to travel in the Philippines. And every so often I go to, or the Department of Education will tap me to conduct an enhancement program to the teachers, whether they're elementary teachers or high school teachers. So this is very applicable. And not only that, but also Civil Service Commission would tap me to handle a program pretty much in the same concept, geared towards enhancing the performance of their the civil servants. So I think this is applicable to a lot of other areas, although I find that this is very interesting as far as the surgical area is concerned. No conflict of interest here. I'm not promoting anything. There's nothing here. If I mention something, a product or a brand, it's just very incidental. I am not promoting it. Whenever we have a live in-person program, I only have 4 rules in the workshop. The first rule will be the class session times. I always have breaks. We don't have breaks at this time, or we probably have, depending on our facilitator. Restrooms, you know where that one is, where you are. But attendance is important for me, and I tell you why. Because at one time, I had always this story when I was young. People uh, will come to the class like this, for example. This is very virtual, but people, a lot of people will come to the class bringing a lot of things with them, thinking that, okay, so I know this, why do I have to attend? I'm going to attend only because I think I'm better than the speaker. And it brings me to a story where, pardon those who practice Zen Buddhism, but this is a person, a young guy. You probably are familiar with this story as well, some of you. But a young guy was so curious and interested about Zen Buddhism. He reads books, literature, talked to people about Zen Buddhism, but he wasn't satisfied until he found Mr. Zen, and Mr. Zen himself entertained him. But at that time, Mr. Zen was quiet. He didn't say a thing, but the young guy was talking. He was talking about what he found out about Zen Buddhism. And at that moment, Mr. Zen poured out a cup of, the teapot on a cup of tea without saying a word and kept pouring it until the young man said, Mr. Zen, stop pouring. The cup is already filled to the overflowing. And that was about the only time that Mr. Zen talked, and he says, young man, you are like that cup of tea. You are already filled to the overflowing. What more can I tell you? And I think that story would make me realize that no matter how good a person is, there is always room for improvement. And that's probably a good rule to follow aside from these 4 that I mentioned here. Now, for leveling of our expectations, if this is a real workshop and you're really here, you would be running around and walking and talking to people. But since we are not able to do this, I would like for you to, if you have the chance to have a paper, write in one column the word gain, and in another column the word give. And under that, your paper would look like this. Write one word. What do you hope to gain in this 45-minute presentation? Just one word. If you're not satisfied with one word, maybe 2. But on the other side, write 1 or 2 words. What do you hope to give? In such a way, we will be able to balance our expectations, what you want to gain and what you want to give. Somebody's writing no. Knowledge, all right? Gain knowledge. What do you hope to give? Give information. Okay, that's interesting. So this, from this screen, maybe some of you are writing too. You can write it anywhere, but it's for your consumption. But know that from that writing, from that response that you make, that is pretty much the expectation we have in this. If you're writing their knowledge, we do have knowledge, so I can share that to you. If you're writing, maybe you say experiences as far as gaining experience is concerned, yes, we have this experience. And if you're writing in the give column, information, we have a lot of information. We can never run out of information. And I think that there's no such thing as educated person. there is only something we call a person that is learning. We continually learn. And so we can give information. We can give our, we can share. Now let's start here. Let's start with my first activity. Let's annoy the ani. This is the title of the activity. Now, I found two meanings for ani. One is that it is a Radha, husband Krishna, name of Lord Vishnu. So this probably is an Indian god. But the second one is interesting to me. It says it's a white-bodied wood and paper consuming insect of the infraorder Isoptera in the order Blatodea. And then it says there a termite. So I'd like to take that definition for the ani because it's more familiar to us, and let's use that word ani. Ani is a termite. It probably would look like this. So it's just a cartoon, but you see the point. And these termites, these anis, they eat this, books. All right? If you're following me, would like to proceed to the next one, and I will give you this. Let's read together. Annoy the ani. One day, Annoy, the hungry bookworm, my screen is covered, literally ate his way straight through a set of encyclopedias right from page 1 of volume 1 to the last page of volume 4. The books were each 1 inch thick, not including their covers, which were 1/2 inch thick each. They sat side by side on the bookshelf in order from the left to right. How many inches of the books did Annoy the ani go through? Show your solutions. Let's give ourselves about 30 seconds to solve that problem. You can put it in the chat. I can read them. All right. Wait a second. What happened here? All right, so 2 inches. Somebody says 2 inches. Okay. More people says 2 inches. 4, 2, 4. Let's stop right there. Okay, so what you are doing, all of you who are participating, what you are doing is you are employing your thinking capacity of solving a problem. So there are 2 things I would like to make mention here. The problem, the last part of the problem says, how many inches of the books did Annoy the ani go through? If you ask a question, even if you don't have an answer, don't like an answer, don't want an answer, or don't care, your mind can never resist a question. You don't have an answer, but you're thinking about an answer. You don't want an answer, but you're thinking about an answer. You don't know the answer, but you're also thinking about an answer. And even if you don't talk, you're still thinking. Your mind just cannot resist a question. There are 2 things that our mind, when we teach, there are 2 things that the mind of our learner cannot resist, and that is a question, and the other one is a story well told. And I'm going to show you how. So in this particular activity here, if there is a book, like, you can see me, right? I don't know how to find this thing. Okay. So anyway, if this is a book, and then there's another book, and then there's another book. Let's look for another book. Got another book right here. It's 4 total. 4 total. The problem says that the termite ate straight through 4 volumes encyclopedia, right from page 1 of volume 1. So right from, was that right? From page 1 of volume 1 to the last page of volume 4. This is volume 1. The first page is right here. Volume 1, page 1 is right here. This is what it ate. And then volume 4, this is the last volume. And the last page is right around here. So this is pretty much everything that the termite ate, without this and without this. So if I show that to you, if you can see that in the camera, this is 1 half, 1 half, 1, 1 half, 1 half. That's 3. And then 1, that's 4. And then 1 and 1 half and 1 half, that's 5. Did anybody answer 5 here? And the people say 6, 8, 7, 6, 8. Okay. So if you look at it, you can see that it's 5. But I wouldn't say 5 is the correct, perfect answer. I would say that that is my answer by the way I look at the book and by the way I look at the problem. And you can answer 7, you can answer 6, you can answer 8. The point I am trying to make here is when you teach in a fast-paced environment like the operating room, you want the mind working. And the mind can only work if you give problems to them. So in any learning situation, you want to always give them something to do, because adults learn by doing things. If you took a book, you probably are like me. You probably are like me. Also trying to determine what is it really, and probably discovered it yourself. Now, what is the point here? When you're teaching, you want to give a problem first. It doesn't always have to be a problem of Anoy, but it can be something that people would start thinking about. And so after that, they will solve it. They will find a way to solve it or find a solution for it. Perhaps convince other people. What I usually do is I give a problem and I will have the individual solve the problem and then group them together, maybe 2 or 3, and then they will compare their solutions. And then that solutions, if they have seen commonalities, they go to another group and then they convince that their answer is correct. And then if the other person sees that the other group answered correctly and they're convinced, their answer will change too. What does that show us as far as teaching is concerned? That shows that people's perspective can change. And then after that, you want to say what I just said, which is I showed you the book, I told you what's supposed to do and what it was all about. And are there any learnings there? I was skipping towards a separate step there, and that is the abstraction portion. And then in this screen that you are watching now, you can see application. This is a very shortcut step process when you go through an adult learning cycle in a fast environment. You don't want to be tempted by skipping the process just because it is very fast. Because you're teaching somebody IM injection, you're prepping the patient, you're positioning the patient, you skip the application. You don't want to skip the application, okay? So that's very important. In this case, the application for me is to write a letter to yourself. So you would want to stop and write a letter to yourself. And that letter would look like this: Dear so-and-so, when I see, complete that statement, or when I heard, complete that statement, and then the remaining part of the sentence would be I realized, and then put that learning there, complete the learning. And then your commitment, from now on, I would blah, 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 blah. So that would be my application part for the ANOI when I'm in that particular problem. You can use that problem, you can make a better problem, you can find a better problem, but give a problem. And a problem, and it doesn't always have a problem. It can be an activity, which is what it is. A problem is an activity to do. All right, so let's move on to this next one, the overview of the preceptor's role. We're moving on right there because I'm showing you 4 steps towards identifying what the steps to deliver a particular lesson for an environment. Now, this one is to give you an overview of the role. So if you are a preceptor, what is that role? The objective of this session is that you will be able to know the 4 major roles, and there are only 4, and I call that the STAR. To discuss similarities and differences between preceptor roles and mentor roles. I'm going to show that also to you, and to recognize adult learning concepts and opportunities in an environment like, let's say, the operating room. Let's move on to the next slide. These are the 4 major roles that I'm talking about. Direct instructor. We are going to give them direct instruction. In the case of what I said in the activities that I gave you is give 1 or 2 words under gain, 1 or 2 words under give. And then I give you a problem and then solve that problem, show your solutions, direct instruction, which means that I should be able to say it, say it, say it. Just keep saying it. If it wasn't clear, say it again until it becomes clear. The next one is coaching, coach it or teach it. So preceptors, they have mentor, preceptor, a person who just tell, a person who is a mentor, a person who is coaching, a person who is precepting, and a person who is teaching. And we'll show you that also. The next one is act it, which is just act it, model it. And then the other one is the more complicated role of a preceptor, which is the facilitator role. A facilitator is also a socializer, is also a reinforcer. It is also pretty much like a mother hen facilitator, but it could also be a mentor in that case. Now, there is an overlap here. That's why I'm trying to define it to just, the first role will be for you to be able to say it and then to teach it. When you teach, then that means there is an evaluation involved in it. And then if you act it, you are the one modeling it, and then facilitating it is reinforcing it. That's how the STAR is. Say, teach, act, and reinforce. We'll talk about that later. Here's the differences between what's the similarities. Hang on, I'm gonna look for interactions. Are there any comments? Where do I see? I lost my thing. Okay, so preceptor versus mentors. What's the difference? These are the, it's like a continuum. It's right here. Right, it's like a continuum. From the other side is selling them. You just sell them. The other side is sell themselves. They should be able to sell themselves. That is the goal. As a mentor, you involve sharing of knowledge. The time is longer, facilitates decision-making, and you are focused on the mentee. Let's take a look at it very quickly. If you're a mentor and a preceptor, a mentor focuses on the learner, and a teacher, in that case, precepting, focuses on the task, on the teacher, on the preceptor. Precepting, preceptor, mentoring, coaching, focused on the mentee, that person. So there is that continuum part there. Coaching involves questioning and assessing. You want to always ask. If we do the ANA, if we do that problem, I will be asking a lot of questions. But there are kinds of questions I'd like for you to always remember when you ask questions. You would want to say, how do you feel? Feel. How do you feel? Mostly when you are in an environment that is fast, you feel, but you don't acknowledge it. So we want to acknowledge the feeling. How do you feel? Do you feel anxious? Do you feel sad? Do you feel, were you afraid about it? Did you feel scared? All those kinds of questions. That's the number one. The number two question that you want to take note. All the other questions, of course, you can ask, but the number two question that you want to remember is the question that starts with why, because you want them to come out. So that's part of the coaching. It involves questioning, limited time investment, because coaching only for that particular activity or role, and then reflective listening. You want to listen, and then you still focus on the task. So you can see there, precepting also has focus on the task, but there is the learner involved also. But this is the teacher, the teaching, the lesson, evaluation. There is limited time in involvement as well. Let's look at the other slide. Here, selling and selling them and sell themselves. The element of context in the mentoring is outside the immediate work setting, but for precepting is within the work setting. So if I'm teaching a nurse, a new nurse, about positioning a patient, I'm precepting. But if I'm bringing the nurse outside of the work environment and asking them or advising them, I'm mentoring. So it's in that context. Let's move on to the analysis and abstraction portion. For Anoy the Anay, we analyzed the book. I showed you the book. And you look at the book and you showed and you followed, and then you have your aha moment. That was the analysis and abstraction portion. All right. So it will be like that. There will be a lot of questions there, but it's also showing them, giving them an aha moment. You are not able to teach, or your teaching is not as effective when you don't have an abstraction, when you don't reach a point where that learner says, okay, things like that. Now here are adult learning concepts. Self-direction. We want to be directed by ourselves. And we want to do things, we want to learn by doing things, but we also want to learn doing things ourselves, that it is structured. That's when structured learning experiences comes in. So is it applicable in the operating room? Yes. Is it applicable anywhere else? Yes. But why do I use this in the operating room? I tell you why. In the let's say operating room, ER, ICU, these areas, you can apply this very, very efficiently. It's because, let's say you are having a hospital project about surgical site infection, and you are teaching a nurse about a particular bundle that you tried to roll out to observe or reduce the rate of infection. How does that work? Because this patient came from the ER, from the floor, went to the OR, from the pre-op, and then now you've got that. So where did the infection start? Is it from you? Is it from other people? Is it after you when the infection came in? So how do we measure it? And if we measure it that way, how am I going to teach somebody who will do that in order for them to understand? And the answer to that is that they need to be involved. And when they are involved, they need to own that problem. And if they own that responsibility, they need to discover, so what is the solution here? Okay. So one time we had the surgical site infection bundle rolled in for gynecology cases. And we need to know our part. We need to know how to do our part in the intra-op settings. So, but we know what it is, but we can't tell them that. By telling them that, we defeat the purpose of adult learning, because adult learning, you can't tell them. They have to discover it themselves. They have to learn it by doing and discover, self-discovery. So we put nurses and techs in the room. We have simulated a case, and they use instruments, and then they talk about the instruments that they're using, and they talk about their sterile fields, and then they discovered this is not correct. And so then we know that they will discover it because it's a learning process, and we structure it. And when they discovered it, they owned it. When they go back to the actual setting, they put it, and it's their solution. It's their discovery. It works for them, and we can measure it because everybody is on board with it. So that's what I mean by being structured and learning by doing it. So how do we learn? Visual, first of all, auditory, tactile, or kinesthetic. Most people that work in the hospital are kinesthetic or tactile. It's very difficult to tell me, to make me learn IM injection by just watching it. Right? I got to be able to be involved in it. And if I don't, then it's hard for me to measure myself that I did know how to do it. Kinesthetic, that's what we are mostly. But there are barriers, the volume of work that you have to do, the switching of roles, your shifts, the interruptions, there are patients, family. Plus, I am unwilling, I am not ready, and my expectation is not set well. So we need to have that expectation. I have preconceived notions. I have fear, and I don't know you, I don't trust you, things like that. So we want to establish an environment that is friendly and non-threatening so that we can eliminate or reduce the barriers for learning. Transfer of training, let's take a look at this. Learning a theory, you can only retain that 5%. Learning by demonstration, you retain it 10%. Learning by practice, 20%. Learning by feedback, 25%. But coaching is 90%. There is a total, almost total transfer there by coaching. So coaching is really the one that you want to do there. You don't, we have this notion that we eat our young because when they come into the operating room, they just get swallowed, chewed, and spit out alive. They will not be able to survive in an environment like that. We need to be able to develop a way where there is a structured coaching so that it's like giving a dog, what do you call that thing that they put on a dog, a barrier of the dog so that they can eat them. They can bark, but they can bite you. Because I don't know if you're aware, but working in the operating room, the environment is very fierce. It's a cutthroat environment. So the coaching there will have to be the only way that can survive as far as teaching is concerned, because there is total transfer. You are the coach. Let's look at the application there. When I told you about those different things, I'm also looking at the 4 cycles of adult learning process. And this part is the application. I look at the application as like this again. There's going to be a letter, a reflection, because it's going to be action reflect. How does that translate when you come to the operating room? You need to have that notebook. You need to have that paper, okay? Maybe you have a PDA, an iPad, a cell phone, but for me, it just, there's something that is tangible with paper. You want to get them, sit down and have the paper and write them down. You don't want to skip that because that is one of the most important. That's the 4th step that you would want to do, and don't ever forget application part. Now let's look at our workforce in America. America is like, everybody's looking at America now, okay? So this is our workforce. Characteristics of our generations. There is no generational time frame that is specifically set, but we can establish some dates or some years. For example, the greatest generation is 1930 to 1945. This group of workforce is gone. They have retired. And some of them are still there, but they are serving as consultants. But they're tired, they're gone. But what are their characteristics? They are from immigrant parents. Worldview was shaped by World War II, Korean War. They value hard work, thriftiness, conformity, uniformity. Large corporations may have trouble adjusting to technical advances. You can see that from your grandfathers. Difficulty understanding Generation X, Millennials, Generation Z. So they just can't connect. And these generations also cannot connect with them. It's just, there is a total disconnect there. I don't understand them, and what I don't understand you either. That's the kind of conversation that we have, but they're gone. The one that's here and they're living to are the baby boomers. 1946 to 1964. Let's look at their characteristics. Parents had secure jobs, worldview shaped by Vietnam War, sex, drugs, rock and roll were prevalent, civil rights movements. It reflects like the whole, the world, the generation of the world, baby boomers. It equates work with self-worth, great work ethic, motivated to succeed, believe they can change the world. And you can see that all around you, may struggle with technology. These are the people that we want to help as far as technology is concerned. Look at the next generation, Generation X. A lot of the leaders now are in this generation. There are generation that were born in 1965 to 1984, you know, give or take. And then they're ironic, cynical, adept, clever, resourceful. They come from divorced parents as far as America is concerned. Latchkey kids. They have kids that are just, you know, they latch them. Worldview shaped by the Iran hostage war, Gulf War. There's a lot of other things that's going on in the entire world. Fall of Berlin Wall, Tiananmen, oppression in South Africa, Challenger, AIDS, first computer disk, comfortable with technology. So take note of that. And then balance job and leisure time. They like distance learning. They endure education as a means to an end. Like everybody needs to be educated. Everybody needs to go to school and find a job. And then they don't waste time learning extra stuff. Okay, so that's not my line. That's not what I do. I don't want to learn that. So don't bother me with that. So that's Generation X. Let's look at the next generation that's next to this kind of generation. Welcome to the workforce of the millennials, 1982, 1984. This is the largest population. This probably is the largest population in all countries, but in America, this is the largest population. So this will give us a background of if this is the largest population of a country like an America, look at it, every other country would mirror that. What are these characteristics? Parents wanted them. They emphasized safety. They are called the Y2K generation. They were called that, but then it was reverted to the millennials because this is the this is the turning point. Worldview shaped by the 9/11, Columbine, Oklahoma City bombing, optimistic, assertive, positive. They are friendly too. And you can see them. You can feel that. They accept authority. They follow rules. Comfortable multitasking. That one, I'm not sure, but it says there. Computer savvy. Get information from the web. Google is their friend. They prefer immediate feedback on work. What do you think of me? What do you think of what I did? Did I do it well? You have. If you're a manager, you want to give them that. If you work in that fast environment like the operating room and you don't have that ability or awareness, and you don't do that the next time, you don't get their cooperation or energy. So you want to remember to give feedback immediately. Here is the last generation, and they are here with us, 1995 to 2012. Actually, this generation don't have a name yet. So just because they started with Generation X and then Generation Y, which is the millennial, and what's next is Generation Z. So they put that Generation Z. They probably will call this generation a COVID generation. I don't know yet, but the Generation Z is what it's called, but there are other names. These are the workforce that comes from non-traditional households, innovative, they're entrepreneurial, they want money, they want to earn, conscious of their futures and challenges. So they say, it would come there, what's in it for me? Okay, so if I join you, if I do this, will it give me this? There is always there's nothing free. Balancing work and personal obligations was the top future career concern, followed by findings of a stable job. They want stable, they want permanent. I don't want PRN, I don't want part-time, I want stable job with all kinds of benefits. It's still the 9/11 and then the recession. So it's along that line. Concern about man's impact on the planet. These are the ecology, global warming, all kinds of things like that. Mother Nature. Very comfortable with technology. Don't get their cell phone away from them. They will die. Social media. They are there, and they have the presence there. And again, a cell phone is a necessity to them. What does this imply to us as far as if you're a preceptor, if you want to say it, if you want to act it, if you want to teach it, if you want to reinforce it, these are the kinds of people that will react to it. And that is a challenge of every preceptor, every coach, every mentor. And we want to be able to address that. And that's part of the training that we do here as far as the STAR program is concerned. Because we want to establish a caring community. As a preceptor, there is an opportunity to care that needs to be focused. So I was once told, if you are going to speak to an audience, your focus should be to the audience, because once you focus on yourself, you lose the audience. It's pretty much like that. When you have a learner that are like this, or probably a lot of us are in this generation too, of course, but when you have a learner like that, but you understand where they're coming from and what generation they can be and what defines that generation, your point of view, your perception, the way you see things, the way the books, you can arrange the books, you can see different perspectives. So there is an answer that is 8, there is an answer that is 6, 5, or 7. And this could be the closest answer, the most logical answer that can give you a different perception of how you can deliver a caring or establish a caring community for a professional learning with you in that particular moment. It is also an opportunity to develop an environment for growth. People learn better in an atmosphere of caring relationship. As I mentioned before, friendly and non-threatening. Now remember, I told you about eating their young. So people can eat their young in the operating room immediately. You know, you have heard about surgeons throwing instruments to them. And I once had a nurse thrown an instrument and it stuck on the wall. And I had once a nurse was bitten by a stick from the charged nurse. These are things that are happening in the OR. It's not, so we need to be able to establish a caring relationship. Otherwise, we will just eat our own. It's like a chicken eating its egg before it's being hatched, okay? So, and then the application portion is an application reflection. We want to have that journal. We want to have those conversation with that learner. So it's always like that. Don't stop like, okay, so it's end of the day. It's you're anxious, your patient probably had coded and all that, but you did not reach a point where you need to have a reflection. What happened today? What went well? How can we improve? And let's move on. You have to close that. All right. So our next session will be learning needs and goals. For learning needs and goals, we want to describe the process. We want to assess the preceptors and preceptors' level of proficiency as far as Benner is concerned. Patricia Benner's from novice to expert. And then identify strategies to support development of critical thinking skills. Critical thinking skills is important, but how does that apply as far as surgery is concerned? Let's move on. The plan. If you're a teacher, you want to ask yourself this question: what do you need to teach to facilitate your preceptor to become a member of your team? Remember, your preceptor, the new nurse coming to you, wants to be a member of your team, but how do you teach? That is that. And then your learning plan is, what does your preceptor need to learn to become a member of your team? How does the preceptor learn? Okay, so some of our operating room nurses, they come from different hospitals, and when they come from different hospitals, they learn something there, and then they bring it to your facility, and then they say, this is how we do it there. Okay, this is how we do it there, but is that the standard? If that's how you do it there, is that how we do it here? So they want to learn, but you want to be strong about what is your plan to remediate that. And then how does that preceptor learn? Is he open? You need to be able to open. That is why I have to have that expectation. You want to set an expectation. What do you hope to gain? What do you hope to give? Things like that. And then if possible, get acquainted with preceptor before the first working day. How's your department welcoming your staff? Do you welcome them? Do you have a cake? Do you have like gather together and welcome the new one? In our facility, we usually have an introduction day during our morning huddle. So we have that. And some hospitals don't, but some hospitals do it differently too. But that's pretty much how it would look like. You want to make sure that you establish a welcoming environment, because you're going to teach, and your learning is going to resist if you don't develop an atmosphere of friendship. This is how you do it for teaching and learning partnership. Get to know each other first, respect each other, set that mutual expectation, establish clearly defined goals, blah, 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 communicate openly and honestly. You can learn this from all kinds of settings, but more importantly, in an environment, well, after a few hours, it's gone, because your learner is going to have case. So a lot of you, if you're not familiar with working in the operating room, a quick description of an operating room: you only have one patient in one room, one patient at a time. So you can't, in the floor, you are given more than one, but in the operating room, you only have one, and you are the nurse, and you are the nurse that's entrusted the safety and care of that particular patient. But you want to look into who else is there. It's you. You have a surgeon. You probably have an assistant surgeon. You have a fellow. You have a resident. You have a surgical tech, assistant surgical tech. That's 7 now. If you're a nurse, you have a nurse preceptor, which that's why we're talking about this, because you have a nurse preceptor. So there's somebody learning with you, and you have an anesthesia provider, probably an anesthesiologist, and there is an assistant anesthesiologist, and there is a CRNA, which is your certified registered nurse anesthetist, and you have a student CRNA, and you have an anesthesia tech. That's 12 people in the room caring for one patient. That's 12 different personalities clashing with a goal to be able to contribute what their skill sets are to take care of that particular patient. So you say, there's only one patient, so it's a good thing. And yes, it is a good thing, but there are 12 personalities to deal with. Okay, if you have only 4 people, that's really good. But seldom, if you have a big hospital and it's a teaching hospital, you will have more people, and you will have to watch the traffic in the operating room. You know, the doors will have to be kept closed. Everything, an OR nurse hears and sees everything, even if she's not there. So it's very intense, and you are teaching. And if you are teaching as a nurse, or teaching another nurse, a surgeon could also be teaching another surgeon. And so there is that conflict in that very small room, 4 corners of a very small room with a patient that the machine is breathing for that patient. The patient is literally dead. And you hope that when you're finished with everything that you do, that patient will come back to life. So that is the nature. And if you don't create that friendly atmosphere, partnership as far as teaching and learning is concerned, good luck with the new nurse. That is why they're eaten very, very easily. So greet with enthusiasm, set educational goals together, relax, facilitate learning by developing and empower. Yeah, you can do it. Can you open the door? Yeah, you can open it. Can you touch it? Yeah, you can touch it. You want to empower them so that they will not, will get less scared, if I may. Identifying learning needs. What is the preceptor already know? You want to identify that. You also want to identify the preceptor's preferred learning style. So preferred learning style, there's a lot, and we don't want to talk about that here anymore. Barriers of learning, we've talked about that, and instructional methods are available. What are these instructional methods? Again, we want to look into the STAR. One instructional method is to be able to say it, which is the direct instruction. When I say direct instruction, you want to say 1, 2, 3. 1, this is what you do. 2, this is what you do. 3, okay? But if you are, your nurse is newer, you want to limit yourself to 2. 3. 3 would be a good number. Limit yourself to 3. 1, 2, 3. First, let's clean the bed. The way to clean the bed is like this: 1, 2, and 3. And then evaluate. That's direct instruction. Another the second approach will be to teach it. So when you are teaching it, you will going to say, I have a bed. What is this bed used for? And this is, the bed is used for this and this and this. This is for cysto. And then, okay, so if this is a cysto, how are you going to set this up? So there is that conversation. Okay, if that is the way it is set up, can you show me? So all those kinds of things for the teaching. And for the acting part, you will say, I am going to show you how to prep a patient. Look at me. I am going to open this ChloraPrep. This is our prep solution. I am going to maybe click this open, and then I am going to put this on the patient's belly, and I'm going to wait for 1 second or 2 seconds, and then when the liquid shows there, I'm going to start rubbing, and then I'll rub from here and there and there until I reach this part. You are going to act it out. You are going to talk out loud. That is what we mean by modeling there. And then by reinforcing it, you would want to say, okay, so you do that, and then I say, okay, so when you do that, I'm gonna do this, okay? Or when that person is doing it and you're watching, you want to have somebody understand that particular nurse is doing that. She is learning this, she's learning that, so pardon this slackness or something like that. So she's being understood. Strategies to enhance motivation: learn what is vitally important, use what they are learning, and provide choices. So remember, growth and development, for providing choices, you want to provide 2 most of the time. Do you want this or this? Because they said, oh, I don't care, I don't mind. So you want to say this or this, and they will answer A or they will answer B. Provide choices and always receive rewards. This is for the application part. Receive rewards for learning, celebrate small successes. Expected outcomes. What does the facility expect you to learn? What does the unit manager or educator expect the nurse to learn? This is the facility. So we want to be able to address these issues as well. Don't just teach and it's already out of the goals and priorities of the facility. So those are some of the expected outcomes as well. All right, let's move on to the next one. Priorities. Here are your priorities as far as learning needs is concerned. Fatal first. For example, when you have a fatal, when it is life and death, I mean, if you don't do that, somebody will die. So those are the things that you want to teach. And what are these things? These are things like, for example, if you have a difficult airway, they need to be able to know where the trach is, okay? It's no longer textbook. Thank you for the textbook, but now here we are. We're going to do this, because if you have a patient that has a difficulty breathing, maybe using a CPAP, and you are intubating that patient, and the anesthesia provider is having difficulty finding the right path towards the endotracheal, the endotracheal cannot, they can't find it, they can see it, You want your nurse to be able to know what's next, right? Another one is the suction machine is sipping lots of blood, lots of fluid. What does that mean? You know, it wasn't written on the it wasn't written on the book, but what does that mean? You just don't stay there. Okay, well, there's bleeding. Okay, so what now? So this is something that you want to make them learn first. That means I need blood right now. Well, it's there's no order. You don't wait for that because there's bleeding or there's possible bleeding. So you want to be able to have that already. They need to learn that. Fundamental is basic. For example, they need to know the weight of the bed. If the weight of the bed is for 450 and you have a patient that is 500 pounds, then you don't use that bed. You know, you start looking for another bed. But sometimes we just put a patient there and say good luck. And I've seen those patients fall down from an operating table because we did not match the weight of that patient with the capacity of the bed. And what is frequently being used? For example, we always start our surgery incision time at 7 o'clock in the morning. That's frequent. So we want to know what's preventing us from doing that and address that because we do that every day. Another thing is fixed. It is fixed. It cannot change. For example, this is always how it is done. There's no other way of doing this. For example, this is the fire exit. There's always, it's fixed. You can't go anywhere else. And then facility. What are the facilities priority? And for the learning interest, what are there? Are they priorities as far as the learning interest is concerned? For example, I want to do hearts, and that nurse is in the general surgery. I want to do hearts. Is that a priority now? Do we need people who can learn hearts in the future? If you do, then that becomes a priority, and you want to teach that too. Okay. So now we want these are the explanations. When we fail to meet those needs, it could result to harm. Represents fundamental and essential aspect of performance. And then we have the frequently done, fixed, and facility issues. Let's go to the 5 stages. This is the common banner stage of proficiency in nursing: novice, advanced beginner, competent practitioner, proficient practitioner, and expert practitioner. So most of the nurses that come in the OR, we would want to put them in the novice stage. If they are experienced from other areas, let's say they've worked on the floor and they want to work on the OR, they have some expertise in the floor. But when they work in the OR, they become a novice. Have they been a nurse? Yes, they've been a nurse for many years, but this is their first time to work in the OR. Novice. If they have some experience in other areas, in other facilities, like in the OR, oh, I've done cysto before, and you work in general surgery, maybe you can put an advanced beginner. Most likely in the novice very quickly, and then advance immediately to the novice, advanced beginner, before you become competent, proficient, and expert. These are the characteristics why we're putting that. Limited practical skills. They rely on rules. They want to see the book because it's written in the book, and there is a lot of implications for teaching and learning. These are the kinds that we want to teach, and these are the kinds that we want to always watch. And then we have the advanced beginner. They have competence skills, marginal. They use theory and principles. These are those that says they are by the book. They do things by the book, but they fail to establish priorities. They are also opportunities to teach and to learn. Competent practitioners, pretty much a lot of nurses that works in the OR for a while, let's say 1 or 2 years. They feel they are competent, they're organized, they can set their priorities. They know that they have to order blood before the blood is needed, not when the blood is needed, then that's the time they order blood. That's not competent, okay? And then they know how to plan, they have plans and they set goals. Another thing about their characteristics is they go through the nursing process very quickly. they use assessment without us knowing that they're doing that. So I always teach my students, tell their students, those nurses who are there, are they using the nursing process? And they said, no, I don't see them. They don't see them, but they're using it because they're competent in doing that. But are there implications for teaching there? Yes, of course. Let's go to proficient practitioner characteristics. They view patients holistically, the whole of it, including discharge to home. Establish priorities with this. They already know. They say, yeah, I know that. They focus on the long-term goals. These are proficient. We call some of this as level 3 and level 4 in some facilities. And I think in the practice of, in the United States, level 3 and level 4 nurses always belong in the proficient practitioner. Let's have the expert. These are the educators. These are those nurses that have a lot of fluidity in their performance and the way they do things, automatic. Before you can tell them that, they've finished doing that. You've seen this in the OR. So that's why when you orient a nurse that's already in this level, they most likely don't like you to teach them because they know better than you. So these are those. But are there implications of teaching and learning? Yes. Now, what are these? If you are doing a clinical teaching, you want to understand that learning is evolutionary. And I mentioned that also in the beginning. No one can call themselves educated, really, but learning, because we are always in the process of learning. There is always something to learn. I've been a nurse for 26 years, and I'm doing this with eyes closed. Well, you make a lot of mistakes, okay? And so is there an opportunity there? Of course. Participation, repetition, and reinforcement strengthen and enhance learning. Here's the thing about this. Participation, yes. Reinforcement, yes. And we advocate that. But repetition, I'd like to emphasize that because repetition is the mother of all learning. In our CNOR, NCLEX, I travel to Philippines regularly for NCLEX reviews. In our NCLEX, I always tell them, repetition is probably your best bet. You want to repeat it and repeat it again and repeat it again until you get it, because our mind is our mind is amazing. It has a lot of potentials in it that is not tapped, but it works only when we allow it. So when you are not practicing it, you are not repeating it until it is absorbed, then no matter what you do, the result will still going to be the same because it's a paradigm. So those are your clinical teaching. Repetition, always repeat. Don't just, okay, I've done that already. Sometimes we say, okay, I just want to see you do it once and that's it. But that's not teaching. You are just complying. You comply with the requirements of your preceptorship program. You're not really teaching. When you're teaching, you want to make sure that that's repetitively done until it becomes a habit. Let's skip this one. Learning contract. Yes, there needs to be a learning contract. In our generation, remember the generation that we're dealing with, generation X, Y, and Z. Generation Z is very fresh, and generation Y is the largest population in the workforce, and generation X are the leaders. They are the middle managers. And so it's very litigious. What I mean by that is we can be sued. We can be charged for something that we did or did not do. And so we want to have a contract. We want to establish that clear. So what we recommend here is that we want to have a learning contract between the preceptor and the preceptee, because we're dealing with patients, we're dealing with patient safety all the time. And if you can make mistakes, someone can die. So I became an OR nurse. I was an OR nurse. I was always an OR nurse. And then I was a first assist before I became a nurse practitioner. But I became a nurse because my dad died after multiple surgeries, and there was a sponge that was left on his belly. And that made me think about how do we prevent this? Is by teaching them well, doing the way we can, in order for us to prevent these things from happening. And it's not easy, but I became an advocate. First thing is count. I was talking this morning about somebody. There are pretty much two things that we do in the operating room. Everything else is a bonus, is a privilege to do. But the main things, there are two main things that we need to do. And that is the first one, to count. Count. I said, do I count this? Do you want to count this? You should want to count that. And the other one is document. So chart, document, and the other one is count. Count it. So if you've seen me in the operating room, I'll be counting all the time. I'll be looking for any single thing. I don't want any single thing to be to be found in the patient's body when it shouldn't be there. You can watch this, you can pick up that, you can position this, you can, all those other things you can do. Well, I agree, but for the most part, count, make sure you account for everything, and the other one is chart. Otherwise, you'll be sued. So that's what it is. If you have questions, and do you have questions? We will ask to have soft copy. Okay, I'll give you soft copy. It will be a great help for the present. Okay, I'll do that. Any other question? Okay, let's move on. Right, so you have that. You have a learning contract. You want to be able to establish a learning contract. Okay, if your facility don't have a learning contract, you want to establish one, propose one to cover your rear. And then goals, general intent, you want to have those goals, establish them so that it's a litigious, wherever you are, it's litigious. We have courts all over. So you want to protect yourself. And then you want to be able to have these specific outlines which are clearly observable results so that you will see that you did your job. The reason why I put that as part of here is I will tell you why. Let's say this example, nurse will initiate IV access correctly. How do you measure it? The only way, one of the only ways I would say to measure our competence is to observe them do it, and it's done well. And it's very qualitative because what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4. And how do you say 3? When do you say 4? When do you say 1? It's really not. I mean, you can say that, but you want to see it and you want to see the results. I have a staff at work, and she's very busy doing lots and lots of things. And I said, where's the result? And there's no result. And so, but it's just busy and worn out. Why is that? Because we tend to do lots of things like the guinea pig on a cycle, right? And we don't want to do that. We want to see result by our naked eyes. So you want to really see them do it. Let me see if you've done it. I've seen you do it before, but can you do it again now, right? So you want to make sure of that. Am I OCD for doing that? Next is the assessment process. You don't want to forget this. A, P, I, and E. Assess, plan, implement, and evaluate. There should be diagnosis there, but diagnosis is pretty much like it's written in the book already. So you want assessment. Do you like, okay, so this is assessment. When you're teaching, you want to say, this is assessment. We're going to assess the patient now. But when you're doing it, you're assessing, but really you are cleaning this and you're writing that and you're talking to that, but you're also assessing, you're planning, you're implementing, and you are now into evaluate. And then that's why you're not seen as assessing, because you're doing all these things at one time. You are proficient in doing that. But when you're teaching, you want to be able to identify, we're assessing, okay? We're planning, and then we're implementing this, and then we are evaluating. You want to be able to identify all that clearly as possible. And then when you implement the learning plan, what and how to teach, competency component, case, knowledge, attitude, skills. I would vote for attitude at a wink of an eye. Knowledge, you can gain that. In fact, we're gathering information all the time. Uh, skills can be learned. If you hang out with me longer, you will learn it. See, I don't need a nurse. I don't need to become a nurse, go to school for 4 years, study and pass the exam, and work in the operating room so that I can give out suture or hand out an instrument. That is a skill. And I can teach anybody to do that. But why do I have to go through 4 years of nursing school only to land in an operating room so that I can give my surgeon a Kelly clamp? It's because of the attitude. The attitude wins all the time. It's all about attitude. So competency, you have a little bit of knowledge, sufficient knowledge. You did have your license, good. Skills, I don't care so much because I can teach you, but do you have the attitude? And if it's a yes, let's go. If it's maybe give me time so that I can teach you. That would be the way I would look at competency. Let's go to critical thinking. Jack and Jill were found dead in a small puddle of water surrounded by pieces of broken glass. There was no blood. What happened? You can post your answers. All right. Set up. Internal bleed. Okay. Anybody else? Poisoning. Junilin, poisoning. All right, that's interesting. Let's look. Jack and Jill, they knew not in the actual scene of the crime. That's funny. Drowning. Okay, let's look. Jack and Jill were found dead in a small puddle of water surrounded by pieces of broken glass. There was no blood. What happened? You can ask me questions, but you can only ask me questions answerable with yes or no. I know this is difficult. This kind of thing is difficult for most nurses. I have a hard time doing this too. The reason for this question is, let's look. This is a critical thinking activity forcing us to think differently. We need to be given time to think through the situation. Sometimes as a preceptor, as a nurse that's teaching, we will come up with an answer, and sometimes we don't. There's just no answer, and we want to be honest. I don't have an answer for that. Let's look at the problem again. Jack and Jill found dead in a small puddle of water surrounded by pieces of broken glass. There was no blood. Could it be that poisoned water? Could it be that Jack and Jill were fish and the fish bowl was knocked over and broke and therefore they died? There is a little water there. There was no blood. So what were your assumptions there? So we make assumptions, right? In critical thinking, we want to make assumptions. Why did you think what you thought? Why did you think it was drowning? Why did you think hypovolemic shock or the water was poisonous? Why did you think those? Why did you think that there was internal bleeding? Why did you think that there was a setup? Because that is your perception. Because you think, or you probably think that Jack and Jill is from the nursery rhyme. Jack and Jill went up the hill. So there are two little kids and they were found dead, and there were broken glass. They probably were hit by all kinds of things like that. But critical thinking, okay, let's stop that activity. But let's move on to dissect that. Critical thinking is thinking about how we think. I told you about our mind. Our mind is so amazing. It tells us a lot. We can do a lot of things, but our mind is, it just is. It's energy. It's not our brain. Our brain is pretty much the same as our nails or our hair. It's part of our body, but our mind is like, if we have a picture of the brain, we have a picture of our car, we have a picture of our house, we have a picture of this, of a flower, a chair. But if you say, what is the picture of the mind? We can't picture it out. So the mind is there's no picture of the mind. But in order for us to understand the development of the mind, we want to draw something, pretty much like a stick person. And then we ask, how did we develop that way of thinking that we have? Because we are conditioned that Jack and Jill are two kids and they went up the hill according to the rhyme. And all these years we think about that, and then here comes the problem, and we can't we were thinking critically, but that's what our mind could reach, because that's what's in there. So there is no, when we say thinking outside the box, that's when we say, okay, Jack and Jill is, what about Jack and Jill is a fish, right? Who would have thought that Jack and Jill is a fish? Because our conditioning is that Jack and Jill are two little kids. And that is critical thinking. Critical thinking is outside the box, thinking of the illogical. For example, I want $1 million in 3 days. Things like that. I want it, I can have it, I will have it. In fact, I'm having it now, and I don't know how. So it's like that. You don't know how, but you just know you can. That's critical thinking. We make assumptions out of habit, and we need to question our assumption to improve our critical thinking skills. Question that assumption. For example, here, we constantly strive to improve. What are the outcomes? Study the results. How can we achieve this? Get this forward. How can we achieve these outcomes more efficiently? Study the process. What was done before to achieve the outcomes? So all these kinds of questions you want to do. Okay, let's look at the counts. For example, I'm teaching somebody. Make sure that there are no surgical instruments that are left inside the patient's body. Well, there are no surgical instruments that are left inside the patient's body. Everything has been accounted for. And okay, and then when we x-ray the patient, there is something inside the patient's body. There's a foreign body, and we took it out, and it is a medicine cup. See that? Well, you counted the instruments, you did not count the medicine cup. How should I give them an opportunity to critically think? Well, the medicine cup is not x-ray detectable. I mean, we did not count it. And besides, medicine cup is usually not x-ray detectable. Let's think about outside the box. What about making our medicine cup x-ray detectable? Does that solve the problem? Yes. I would be very rich if I could think critically outside of the box by doing that. So I told you about teaching students surgical infections, infection initiatives for gynecology. And they did discover something. We use instruments for a gynecology patient. First of all, I told them, how do you prevent a surgical infection by way of your practice for prepping the patient? Prepping the patient's belly. Okay, prepping the patient's belly, that's pretty much standard. Where do you go next after prepping the patient's belly? This is hysterectomy, so I will prep the vaginal area. So I go prep the vaginal area. Okay, that's pretty standard. Everywhere you go, that's pretty standard. Now, why am I asking you that? I'm asking that because we are dealing with surgical infection. What could happen there? And they said nothing. It's just we're doing it by standard, by the book. Okay, so let's look. You are prepping the patient's belly first, and then you are going into the vaginal area to prep it, but you can understanding you can never aseptically prep the vaginal area, no matter what you do. And so now you just contaminated or potentially contaminating the belly that you've already prepped. See that point? And then they start asking questions like, okay, how does that happen? Well, you can splash from the vaginal area to the belly. But what about if you prep the vaginal area first and then go to the belly, and you don't have to come back because whatever is splashed there, you're prepping it. And so then, oh yeah, so that's what we did because they've discovered that that worked for them. What did I do? I asked them questions, and I asked them questions to make them think outside of the box, right? And so we're counting sponges, right? Or we're counting sponges. Where do you put your sponges? I count them there in the sponge bag. So when they're in the bag, they're accounted for. Okay, so what do you do? We hang the bag. Okay, when you hang the bag and there's more sponges, what do you do? Things like that, it makes them think critical. They will probably discover lots of things that we need to do that we're not doing. So that's important as far as critical thinking is concerned. And this is what I would leave you with. Critical thinking entails purposeful, informed, outcome-focused, or results-oriented thinking. That's why there is a result, because you're thinking critically. And deliberate logical reasoning and linear, nonlinear thinking used to analyze, synthesize, and evaluate relationships between components of the nursing process for the purpose of self-regulatory judgments and clinical decision-making. These are the ins and outs of critical thinking. This is where everybody thinks critically, but a lot of us don't understand what it is for. And we find it wasteful because it's not being used, and we're critical thinking, but then it dies because we don't sustain it. So what I'm trying to really emphasize as far as critical thinking is concerned is sustain it, keep doing it, and then it will be recognized because you sustain it. Oops, what happened to us? All right. So that's what I am trying to share as far as the STAR is concerned. Critical thinking, you want to be able to say it, you want to be able to teach it as far as your teaching style is concerned, but really ask questions. The way to an adult learner is the questions that you're asking. And stories, they are sticky. Stories are sticky. You are going to ask questions, and the two most important questions you're going to focus on is the question of feeling, which is, how do you feel, or what did you feel? And the other one is, why? When you do that, you can never miss your new nurse is on for a successful journey. I hope everybody is learning something. Okay.
All right. Thank you again, Dr. Levine, for such an insightful and, of course, engaging presentation. To those of our participants who have questions, kindly type in your questions on our chat box. Sir Jerome, are our mentees working? Is our mentee working? If not, you can just enter the questions in the chat box. It is very good, Dr. Levine, that we have what we got from your discussion is that the role of nurses as a preceptor being the star. No, of
Yes.
course, yes, that's very
They can
exciting.
email me their questions as well, and I'll be happy to set up. And I think Jerome knows me. if they want, at some point in time in the future, they want me to visit and do a workshop with clinical instructors and things like that, I would be happy to go there and really have an engage with them so that we can enhance this particular experience.
All right. I think we have a question here from Mr. Giancarlo Divina from Cebu. What is the best practices you have encountered in transporting the patient from ward to OR? And which one is the best for patient safety?
Okay.
Follow-up is that, sige sir, you may answer first, then I'll give the follow-up question.
Oh, okay. So I think the best way to do that is make sure that safety is always a priority there. Side rails up. There's no you just transport. Okay, so let's blow this up. In this season, in this current situation that we have, um, full PPE. We call that the full battle gear in our hospital. Full battle gear, like that when you're transporting a patient. So we don't care. So we just overwrite the CMS standards of the PPE. When you have that, what we do is you're taking care of the patient. If it's COVID positive or negative, or whatever, we treat everybody as if they are COVID positive, and we put that PPE gear, right? What is the standard practice is put on the PPE, take care of the patient, take off the PPE and transport the patient, put on the PPE, bring the patient into the operating room, and then take care of the patient, and then take off that. That's a lot of steps. But in our case, put on PPE, which is 2 times or 3 times intense than the prescribed, and you use that for the entire time. So you skip a lot of steps just because of this situation. That's pretty much what's most efficient at this time. But I would say follow your facilities guidelines for that, but with a particular emphasis on safety.
All right, so we got that safety is truly an issue, especially in transporting patients. We have a good question here from Dr. Giancarlo Torres, and as you have discussed earlier, that preceptorship program plays a big role in terms of training nurses, old and new. So his question is, how long do you usually implement the preceptorship program, and based how sorry how based on your experience, how early can a preceptee do a solo scrub?
Ah, okay. So first of all, our preceptor program is for both nurses and scrubs. Our scrubs are not nurses; they are scrub technologists, but they can pretty much do except to chart and hands-on care with the patient. But how long will that take for the scrubs? We give them 3 months for that. And for the nurses, if they are the preceptor, 3 months up to 6 months. And the reason for that is there's a lot of things. I think different settings will different. In the past, my experience for preceptorship program when I was with a cancer center is different because of the chemotherapeutic drugs, and our patients are very immunocompromised. But recently, in my facility now, since we are a trauma, so it's just the speed of it. But because it's so fast, if you are, I'm not sure if you're, I'm fast, but I couldn't catch up with the speed that much. So we give our nurses a lot of time to catch up. And to do that, we have 21 days of doing just one thing, 3 months of doing the entire routine, 3 months, and that's for the preceptorship, and 6 months to to plan the next 3 months, to plan to launch them off, that they can do on their own. When we say they can do it on their own independently, they should be a proficient practitioner, and that means they can scrub and circulate.
All right, thank you, sir. We got that. I think we should do the preceptorship program at an individualized level of the reception of the
Yes.
learning.
So
Yes.
that's where the learning contract is only for that particular preceptor with that particular nurse. They are that. Now that preceptee, that new nurse, may not always be with the preceptor. He may be with another nurse for another task, for another routine that is not within the preceptor's ability. So there are clinical experts for that. But you, as the preceptor, designated for that. So here's the thing about the mentor. The mentor, you choose it. If you are new and you choose that person, that's the mentor. But as a preceptor, you are being assigned. You are the preceptor, and that is your preceptee. So you're being assigned, you are being matched, and then you have that learning contract. So when you take care of that, and then he goes to different areas, but you follow up on that. So that's only a specific period of time, which is about 3 months for us.
Yes, that's good, sir. I think that was the one that you're mentioning earlier about
Yeah.
repetitive activities, making it a habit for these nurses to
Yes.
develop. And we have a comment here from, I hope I can read his or her name well, Marwa Safra Damak. In Saudi, they do it for 3 months, the program.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Good. 3 months.
Another question, sir. Yes, sir. 3 months
Oh,
for them.
mhm.
Question from Edgardo Mendoza.
Okay.
Nurses who expressed interest in transferring to OR suddenly encountered failure or frustration on such move while on orientation, leading to dissatisfaction. What parameters will be a concrete basis in letting go of the orientee, assuming there is a learning curve they are experiencing?
Good question. There's a lot of learning curves in the operating room. I mean, no matter where you are, there's a lot of learning curves in the operating room. But I would suggest we have a program, we call it the Periop 101. And that's an
Mhm.
AORN program that developed for everyone who wants to work in the operating room. So what we usually do is, okay, you're from the floor, you want to work on the operating room, fine, we welcome you. You go through the Periop 101. The Periop 101 runs 6 months. All you do is learn the concepts, the principles, acclimatize yourself. And then after that, did you pass? Did you like it? We study them. And after that 6 month period or so, they start their orientation, which means they already have the background, and then they start doing that. I know that in the Philippines, you learn to scrub, and then you probably have a rotation while you are still in school, and then um, let me remember, that's a long time ago. And then after that, you have a rotation in the operating room, and they just teach you how to scrub. There's pretty much no teaching about how to circulate. And then when you circulate, you're just told, oh, this is a job, but there's no actual situation. Um, in situations like in settings like the US settings, for example, the circulating nurse is the one that has the most responsibility, and the burden lies on their shoulder. So what will happen is they need time for that. So when you transition and you're not up for that, it's like giving you a shock. You get a shock there. So you don't immerse them immediately. You want to give them a little wetting here. What does that is the Periop 101. They will learn how to hold a bovie or a prep solution. They want to study and play with the drapes and all that before they can actually go into the operating room to observe. So, and then they start, oh, I like it. And then they start, oh, I want to stay here. And so then, okay, then you go ahead. because it's pretty intense in the operating room if you really come to think of it.
That's a good note, sir. No, it is. I think simulation may also help in giving the trainee or preceptee the feel of what is being in the operating room prior to direct exposure. Uh, Another from, I think we can just entertain two more questions. One here is from Carlo Divina again from Cebu. Their hospital is developing a perioperative cross-training program. Can we have the draft review for comments and suggestions? Ayun pala yan. But anyway, utilizing the framework or program of yours.
Of course, of course. The program is first. We're only talking about that here because this is the way the setting is. But the
Yeah.
program is pretty intense. It is developed. I developed it, and then there's a lot of people that are involved in implementing it. It's the first in our facility. It's the first in our system. It's also the first in the country. It's probably the first in the world. The only one that's available is the one that's developed by AORN, which is the Association of Operating Room Nurses in the US, and but they own the Periop 101, and their preceptorship is theory based, so it's not practice based. Since I have a DNP, I'm a nurse practitioner, I translate theory into practice, so that's what makes it different. So when you present it here, I can present you some theories here, but really it's the feel is different when you are there handling the preceptorship program. It's like you are in the cloud. So I suggest if you want that, I can definitely go in there. I travel across the United States for this, but I'm also holding it in our facility. But also in the Philippines, I can do that, and I don't charge any professional fee. We just need to set a date that is agreeable with my schedule and the schedule of that facility, and then off we go. Jerome knows that, and so when that's set up, I'll be there.
Thank you for that, sir. So JC, you can contact na lang din maybe Dr. Levine. This last one question, sir, uh, would be about, you've mentioned earlier that, okay, you've mentioned about earlier establishing a caring relationship between the preceptor and preceptee, and of course the mentor-mentee. We have one question here from Ronnie Lin. So, how do you deal with OR nurses in staff OR nurses staff COVID-19 anxiety? What can you suggest or words of encouragement to deal with this pandemic? Since, of course, we have a role of being carer for our preceptees.
Yes. Okay. So let's start with the environment. The environment is we can say no, right? And then we have COVID positive patients that will be going through a surgery. I'm trying to imagine that, and so the environment will have to have that set up first, because it's anxiety. Without COVID, we are already intense, and then with COVID, it doubles it up. So a lot of our in my hospital we have 5 OR complexes. So that's how big it is. If you can imagine that, we have 5 OR complexes. When I see OR complex, one OR complex has 24 ORs, another has 12, another has 12, like that. So a total of 61 operating rooms for one hospital. And so that's without COVID, that's already intense. And then with COVID, that doubles it. We establish like COVIDville, what do you call it? But it's only dedicated for COVID positive cases or surgeries, so that the nurses that we train them every day. Even if they're already trained, we just keep training them as if there is still COVID. We put that garb, everything, and we check them if there are leaks and all that. And when there's actual case, it's like a flying to the moon, right? The what do you call that thing? The rocket. When they fly to the moon, it's not their first time. They have simulated it over and over and over again. It reduces the anxiety of your staff. So you want to just keep doing that. That's at least that's for my experience as far as doing it is concerned. But also, here's another thing about this: if we keep thinking about it, it surely will stay with us. Which means that if I'm anxious, this is this and this is one of our nurses was really doing that, and she had diarrhea and all that, and there's not even a case. The case was negative. The test came negative. She had diarrhea. You know, it can affect us. So we don't want to do that. We want to reduce as much as possible by getting them used to the situation. And if we don't have those many cases, still get used to it. At least that's how we do it in my facility.
All right. So doing it habitually will
Yes.
later on cause a decrease in the level of anxiety and stresses of these operating room nurses. So thank you, Dr. Levin, for answering our questions. No? So there are other questions, but I think in the interest of time,
Yeah.
we can answer that maybe through an email, hopefully.
Send it to me through email, and then I will address them.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So Dr. Levine will entertain those questions via email. So thank you again to our amazing presenter, Dr. Levine, for, of course,
Thank you.
especially adding value and strengthening to the practice of nursing both as a science and as an art. So finally, to deliver the closing remarks, let us welcome the Director for Business Development of the Filipino Nursing Diaspora Network, Mr. Gladwin Maranon.
Canada, and North America. On behalf of the Filipino Nursing Diaspora Network, I want to express my paramount gratitude to our webinar presenter, Dr. Johnrich Randall Levine. It was a thoroughly enlightening and informative session for the listeners. We are confident that it was an optimistic experience for you as well. The information you shared with our participants was very educational. We are also grateful to our moderator today, Professor Fitzgerald Haminit, who ably ran the event smoothly. In the role of the moderator, you ensure that our audience were comfortable and engaged in the discussion while eliciting valuable and informative commentary. Salamat po. Finally, on behalf of the Filipino Nursing Diaspora Network, I would like to express my appreciation to all our participants for taking time out of your busy schedule just to attend in today's webinar, and to all your organization for sending excellent participants in today's event. Their presence has been invaluable and without any doubt has helped make this event a great success. I would like to close my remarks and wishing the future prosperity of all the participants. And we look forward to seeing you once again in the weeks to come, when we shall reconvene to discuss another topical theme affecting the nursing sector worldwide. Thank you so much for your time today, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Sir Gladwin Maranon, for your closing message. We had a very rich discussion this morning. So again, thank you, Dr. Levine. And at this juncture, we would like to thank our event partners, the Beta Nu Delta Nursing Society, and of course, Nursing for Humanity. And to everyone, our participants, thank you for your participation and please stay safe. You may evaluate the program using the link that you can see on the chat box, which Sir Jerome shared earlier. So thank you, everyone, and hope you have a very safe and good morning. Thank you, Sir
Bye-bye.
Jerome.